Hey guys.
Hey,
Hello.
what's up, everyone? Alex, you're
Hey.
super loud.
Oh, is that any better?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, great.
What's up? How's everyone's Saturday?
It's good. Yeah, it's good.
All right, we got everyone. Anton, Maya. All right, let's kick it off. So yesterday we talked about the kind of the UX use cases in general. The reality is that for any types of use cases, we need to start building out the actual infrastructure pieces. And obviously this is tied directly to all the work that Risk Factors team and the Task Ties and TaskVT were doing. And basically we have all the pieces, but we're definitely failing to integrate them into one place. And I just wanted to start this conversation and see what are some very specific things that you, Alex, from your side of things, observe to be easily integratable into this pipeline.
Um, yeah. So I mean, to be completely honest, I don't have a very good and maybe Maya can speak to this better than I can. The idea of what's going on with the other teams as far as task ties goes. I mean, what it seems to me like what Christine pumped out in this last Kegel round, that's really like the easiest place to start. And just kind of, sectioning that out into different different components so that we can more easily aggregate them and manage them.
Yeah, the black box for me is understanding why it's so hard to integrate very specific like pieces of code that we've developed for these like one-off initiatives. So for example, the named entity recognition pipeline, it seems like there is something that Christine and other people created that literally took us like 2 months to integrate into the process, and I'm not even sure it's it's renewable. Something tells me that it's one-off kind of upload versus being able to consistently regenerate entities as the Core 19 updates. And correct me if I'm wrong, Anton.
Well, yeah, because in reality, it's not exactly like pipelines. It's everything is either in form of a like Python script or notebook that you need constantly to like rerun. For example, like if you observe Mike Honey, every time he wants to update his notebooks, because his notebook to generate data for his Power BI for our, let's say, literature review demo, he needs to get updated, data in, and he relies on some other Kaggle notebooks that were produced like upstream for him. So he needs to go pin somebody to rerun those Kaggle notebooks, then those people kind of like, okay, let's rerun it. And now they try to rerun it, but initially, if for Kaggle submission, there were like, I don't know, like 50,000 full text papers. It takes one time to run. Right now, it's like 88,000 papers, etc. It's probably crashing or something, and that's why everything like it's so disjoint in terms of pieces. We kind of, in terms of infrastructure, etc., bringing all those pieces in bits by bits, but since it's like you take specific case, you set up everything out, but then it turns out that there is still dependency on some random Kaggle notebook out there, right? And then you kind of like, oh, wait a second, there is yet another piece that you need to incorporate, etc.
Yeah, but why do we rely on Kaggle notebooks? I mean,
that's a good question. That's the good question.
Oh, I think we should break away 100%. I think we just stick with GitHub or GitLab, whatever people want to use, and so it sounds like there's, so Anton, do we have the automation for bringing either bringing the data, bringing the Core 19 updates, in-house, or
So, but here is the thing, like we have Core 19 in-house. We process
I
Core
have a
19
question.
in-house. Yeah.
We have Slava's collab, okay? And there are a lot of pieces of code there as well, including pieces of code that are that target pretty precise extraction of I think that abuse factors is actually something that is nice for demo purposes. Do you think these are easy to get now? I
Yeah,
think
so
yes.
yeah, so that when we set up like our own collabs on our servers, that was like essentially a genius move, I would call it, in our environment, because like suddenly you kind of like see what people actually run, and you can kind of look at like actual, no, for example, like again, just having notebooks in GitHub or whatever, like single storage does like it's just one piece of a puzzle. It's necessary condition, but it's not a granting condition, because people generate lots of notebooks. Some of them, again, because it's R&D, some of them are like kind of useless, right? People run it, it's still there, but nobody is using it at the end of the day. So having collab, what Maya just spoke about, right? Her team was started using those early on. That was like a big move to get in a better position. But for example, like test ties, if you look, they have, again, some of the stuff that Mike Honey utilizes is on Kaggle. I mean, it was like 2 weeks ago, and we're working on decoupling Mike Honey from Kaggle as an infrastructure platform. But it's just kind of like the reality where we are.
I think the more we talk in generalities, the harder it is to get something accomplished. So let's take one piece of the Christine's pipeline, the one that you, Alex, are the most familiar with, be it the named entity recognition or sample size extraction. Let's take that notebook, migrate it to our collab, and try to connect that collab with our MongoDB, basically to make sure that that notebook is able to be rerun on demand for now. Then we can schedule it, and then we just connect the proper Core 19 from our MongoDB to it, right?
Well, this will be like the first step. Second one will be converting the notebook to, like, again, Python script, and again, so you can optimize it a little bit in terms of execution time, etc. But yeah,
I think
the
that's
first step, I agree.
the next step. Does that sound good?
Yeah, I think that sounds good, Artur. I think that's a very clear path.
Yeah, I could give you an example, like, for example, what we already kind of successfully done in terms of like how we started with just, again, a bunch of notebooks. If you look, like, I don't know, 3 months ago or 4 months ago at this point, what Brandon did for initial pre-processing pipeline, it was a bunch of notebooks. Those notebooks you can't run on Kaggle because they will crash in Kaggle. You can't run them on Collab anywhere because, again, like the only like fat Deloitte instance was able like to process it. Then when we like launched our like virtual machines for labs, when we get credit for Google Cloud, etc., Brandon did like a next version of it that, we're crashing all of our virtual machines, etc., but we could still kind of trim the fat and we're able like to run it. Then another month or two passed, we start working on actually kind of like essentially step 2, right? So first we got Python notebooks running on our servers. We saw how they run. We could monitor, like load here and there, so kind of technical details, like what goes bad on where we do need to like optimize it. then second version took like 3 or 4 weeks for Lukash and Team Search Engine team to kind of, again, convert into more kind of from like early stage code to more of, okay, we have classes, you can import them, yada, yada. And at that same time, Core19 dataset changed their structure, etc. They had like this big change, version 15 at that point, and when they transitioned to rolling releases, etc. So we kind of caught up in that a little bit, but now we are already at the stage of wrapping up of kind of like how to package that pipeline into. So we're already packaged in the Docker container, and now it's all about, so it's not the moving piece anymore. The moving piece is the rest of the infrastructure. So how we span like hundreds of those containers so they could process the Core19, you know, in parallel versus like 3-4 days. It's only currently where the stage of it takes like 20 hours to process. And then the next piece is like, okay, so we process the data pretty quickly, but how do we, you know, ingest it into next step? How to put it into Elastic, etc. This is where like I'm currently working on with Slava. Because again, we have the code to ingest it into our Elasticsearch, but it's still, you know, just like this, I guess it'll be second step of our process, right? We have that code not somewhere on Google Colab, we have it on our GitHub repo. You can technically run it, but when you run it on a scale, it kind of breaks down. So you need to, you know, work on that so it works reliably, etc. So it's just kind of an example of, you know, step 1, step 2, like step 3. And it's, again, all of these steps will just go into MVP, right? Kind of productionizing and even like more high availability, robustness, etc., etc. They'll be beyond those 3 steps. So here we, for this literature review thing, what we have like working proof of concept, right? So if we go all the way to my Kanye demo, it works, right? Now we can reconstruct how bits and pieces of the pipeline, that how the data get into the Power BI instance. But you know, that thing is like step 1 should happen. Like to me, we're still kind of, we know that it works, but the step 1 hasn't happened yet.
I don't think that for the demo purposes, okay, we really kind of need some pipeline that is related to
Yeah, I agree. All the declaration and all the things.
We just don't need it. What we need is, like, for example, we decide that we go precisely for pharma and precisely for some specific case. In a demo, what should happen? What would be the user story, okay? Because when you try to get money, you don't really have a working product, but you have a nice user story. And it goes like that. You just go to some interface, okay? You type in whatever they type in, and they should get extremely relevant results.
Yeah.
So no, again, what you're describing is just, okay, the moving piece is essentially iterating on the user interface, right?
Not
yeah.
really. I mean, essentially what Maya is describing is the subset of, you know, all this functionality, which is user types in something, which is, you know, by the use case of Andre from the recent stuff, he types in heart rhythm, and we can kind of mimic it through this tool, like see the heart rhythm disease.
Yeah, the thing is, okay, let's say we have our prototype. Now you see this tool, and now you're trying to, oh, let's add this functionality. Let's add this graph visualization. So how are you going to implement this quickly, prototype this piece in the interface?
So
the truth is that on a very beginner demo steps, it might be that some things do not work and they are just pictures. And like, I think it will be useful for all of us. I have a guy who is a Salesforce champion in demoing, okay? He's like one of the best people really doing demos. Often he shows products that don't even work or don't even exist yet. Some things can be just a picture, actually. Like when you think about, again, what I'm trying to stress is that when you think about demo, it's less about real functionality. It's more about the story you tell, and there should be something that is crucial for user. I think the graph won't be crucial. What will be crucial is a search function, getting relevant results, and getting some relevant observations on top of that, like some analysis of the article without actually analyzing it.
Yeah,
That's
Maya.
probably
So essentially, what you're describing is, I completely resonate with that. But like, we're trying to solve that in the context of like user research and actually preparing the use cases. Here, we're more talking about what are the crucial pieces of infrastructure that have to exist for us to be able to at least mimic some of these features. And I truly believe that all of these pieces already exist. And even in the work that you've done in the risk factors, the n-grams and all of these things that Kevin Lee was working on, like it's already possible to, if not graphs, we can just list out items the same way as the Ryan tool does. What's the name of it?
Ryan, double Y.
Yeah, so this tool, if you open the, let me quickly show you what I mean. Yeah, of course it's not working. Okay. But basically what they were showcasing, when you type in something, there's a list of things with the relevance to it. So basically, this graph can be as simple as a list of all these n-grams, and people can select and deselect them. So as a result, they type in heart rhythm, they see all kinds of things. Like it doesn't have to be a graph. Let me try to change the view. Yeah, see, like it can be a list of things, and as a result, it broadens the search. But then the next step is just filtering. So we already have classifier to detect clinical trials. We just need to integrate it to be able to constantly produce these collections in MongoDB. And then we can just query, like give me all of the papers that have these entities that are clinical trials. And that's it. We have a demo that is way more relevant than any of the current solutions, PubMed, and any of these. And we already have all the pieces. So the question really is, how do we take these pieces of code that exist in notebooks, make them our notebooks, and connect them to the actual source of Core19 right now, which is, I assume, our MongoDB, and recreate these collections, like clinical trials or papers from China or papers from Elsevier or other places. Because then we have n-grams, we have collections, and it's as simple as connecting these two. That's it.
I think it's that means to ping team leaders. Someone has to take everything that we have in Slavas collab. Someone has to go over it and understand what it is. It's huge. It's a huge work, but all pieces are there. Most of the pieces are there.
Yeah, I don't think.
Well, all of the pieces are there, right? Because we know that the data at some point ends up in, for example, like visualization of my honey, right? So we know that eventually the data got propagated all the way to the end, right? And this is exactly the data that now in a demo, we're just describing, okay, how we package that data set, right? So we know that all the pieces are already on the table. It's not like, oh, we'll need to run for something else, or, it's
We
either on
don't
the
even need
table
to
or somewhere in
understand
the
it,
fridge.
honestly. Like,
Yes.
we should just treat notebooks as something that produces the results, and that's it.
So should we be bringing in Mike Honey since, I mean, it sounds like he's the one that knows exactly, which notebook does what, since he's the one that produced the visualization for it.
So, like I already spoke with Mike Honey, so he knows some of the, so he knows essentially
Okay.
the endpoints where he got the data from. And he knows that like having something on Kaggle and something, somewhere else, it's like first, so he already on board on the fact that Kaggle is not exactly like working solution.
Yeah.
And he starts kind of like, essentially, if you observe him on Slack for the last couple of weeks, this is what essentially what he was doing. So I agree that we need to bring him into the mix and start like, so it's not about Mike Honey, it's about the work he done, right? Because this is essentially this sync source, and now we can reconstruct back what are the essentially this disjoint components that we'll kind of use there. And then we need a list of those components. And then it's, again, it's like, I would say this is definitely like this very time consuming, tedious piece. But after we do that, then it will be much easier, I think, to engage more people to help us out, because you could kind of say, okay, guys, we have this, an example of Python notebook. Now we need to optimize this piece, to work as a, like, as a simple Python script that, if you launch it, it takes data from data folder and puts in an output folder. Can somebody do this and, optimize it for speed or something? And you portray it that way, people see it as like a dedicated task, etc. And you blast it to our community. Again, I'm not talking about that, oh, we're optimizing a super high availability delivery of a pipeline. No, it's just medium of portrayal, because nobody wants to do, okay, guys, we have a pipeline, let's assemble it. And like nobody responds from work requests. That's why I'm thinking through like, okay, we need architecture viewpoint, at least for people in this call, right? And just simply like, okay, guys, we have lots of Lego pieces and we have multiple sets of Lego pieces on the table. We know that our goal, we build in like, say, a Star Wars Death Star set, right? We know that all of the pieces are somewhere there, but we have lots of people in our sandbox, in our kindergarten, right? We're all playing with all of those pieces, but now we need to go around and take our set pieces from other people, right? And again, everybody is willing to give them to us, but we need to kind of say, you know what, we're looking for, like, it's not enough just to say we're looking for like red pieces or blue pieces, right? We're looking for this Death Star pieces, but the only thing we have is what we call this mock-ups, or right, like UX UI type of picture. We don't have the 3D type of kind of visualization in our minds, right? So that's why it's a challenging problem and kind of tedious work to do. But I think we'll get there. At least, like, I think we'll have an idea of the process, how to get there.
Honestly, I highly recommend for us to take on a very small task of generating a collection of clinical trials. And that is again, a classifier that Task Ties worked on. And if you, Alex, can take that notebook and kind of like transport it into our Colab and somehow connect it to produce that collection as a separate thing in our database, I think that will be a very actionable thing that would also showcase us a way to do this for other pieces of the puzzle.
Yeah, I'll focus on that between now and our next meeting.
Cool. All right, I think that's
I agree. Actually, I actually really like this idea that essentially we don't need to couple what we do here with like this, again, demo UX UI piece, right? It's better to kind of, we need to be in between those things, right? But it's kind of left brain, right brain type of operation. like the UX UI piece, again, for demoing, etc. My is totally correct, right? We could iterate, again, work on mockups, and like we have the people, right, kind of working on that. But we need, I mean, on the other end, we just essentially like those people will just need simple collections of documents, yada yada, and Mike Kanye is probably still the good place to start, right? Where he got that info for his demo, and then just go from there.
Yeah, cool. I think that's actionable enough. Let's make that happen. Not sure, Alex, when you'll be able to work on that, but let's try to accomplish it early next week, if possible. And
Alex, if you need some help or support in anything, you're very welcome to ping me. And if I have some spare time, I'd love to help you.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, I'll definitely let you know. Though I guess the one question, and maybe Anton, you can answer this, but so do you know where, like, is there already a notebook that we're using for interfacing with MongoDB? There was one a while ago.
So I'll definitely like shoot you a couple of examples that I'll find. Another input for you, all of the Python notebooks that I'm aware of that TaskTies were using, they are all already in TaskTies GitHub repo. They're not necessarily work as is because it was simply like I saw a link on their channel, or Christine, send me directly, okay, here is our like notebook that we use for submission, etc. Then what I was doing, I was simply taking all of those notebooks, kind of getting them on GitHub and just kind of archiving them more versus kind of, okay, this is a proper code base, etc. But still at least some points of references, because you can probably kind of see it, maybe then search it somewhere on Slack or, somewhere like for bits and pieces of code, and then maybe we'll find a more up-to-date version, or maybe on Kaggle. Because right now, I spent this work as well, this tedious work of essentially, guys, like, first of all, what you run, and they kind of like, oh, this is our notebook. Like, okay, then where do you run it? And then you kind of like, oh, I see. Some people use Kaggle, some people use their local machines, etc. Then the next step is kind of, okay, so what is your input, right? What is your ingestion? What is your like egress, etc. And but again, don't focus on dated pieces, just to be aware of those. Working with, again, Mongo collections, etc. I'll definitely help you out in this regard. So
cool. Okay, that'll be great.
Feel free to bother me regarding that, like any time of day.
Okay. Yeah, I'll be focusing, I think, on Christine's Kaggle notebook right now, because that's the one that I've been updating, and so that's the one I know works.
Okay.
But if I run into any trouble, that'll be good to know that it's on GitHub as well. So thank you. Thank you both. Well,
all right, that sounds like a plan, awesome. And I'm pretty sure that your successful execution of this will lay down the path for other teams to replicate that. So let's see how it goes. No pressure.
All right.
All right, sounds good, guys. Thanks, everyone.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
See you, bye.
Thank you. Bye.